New buy-sell keep avoid is back for Game Week 13. Welcome to FPL Mate, my name is Dan and it's time to rate those best transfer moves to make this game week using data, the fixtures and our eyes as well. Let's get started. If you haven't done so already, make sure to check out the Stick to FPL podcast. The latest episode, Game Week 13, is out right now, where we do some deep dives into the likes of Cunha, João Pedro, as well as the big captaincy moves for this game week, because I think it is a really big one. Check it out, link in the description, or search Stick to FPL on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. And if you're new to the buy, sell, keep, avoid videos, this video is split into two sections. The first half, we're going to figure out which players we should be keeping and which we should be selling. After that, we're going to analyze who we should be replacing them with some avoids, and of course the buys, the players we are really interested in. The players will be tier listed, with the players towards the top, the higher priorities, and the players towards the bottom, maybe the players we don't want to be looking at quite as much. Let's get going. And as always, we're going to start off with the keeps and the sells, with the forward position first of all. And we've got three big players to keep this week, mostly because of those great fixtures. So Isak, a lot of people looking to remove him already after a disappointing blank against West Ham United, but he was very close to scoring in that game. Super unlucky to see Newcastle get nothing out of that game. They were by far the better team for the majority of the fixture, and Isak continues to put up the best attacking numbers, the best XG numbers in the Premier League outside of Haaland, and we will get to Haaland, don't you worry about that. But 21 shots in just 5 appearances in the last 6 game weeks is incredible, with 8 big chances and 3.43 XG. The next fixture is against a weak Crystal Palace defence, so you can imagine that Isak will have yet more opportunities to score, and those penalties are very useful as well. Our other keeps here are Wood against Ipswich. I think with Wood's, his ability to score goals from all of his big chances means that this Ipswich fixture is going to be perfect for him. Ipswich still one of the weakest defences in the Premier League, and we're back Wood really to do something in this fixture. After that, I can understand why you might want to sell him. And Wissa is probably good for one more game week as well. We know Igor Thiago is lurking right now, but Wissa's another player putting up some great data in limited minutes since his return from injury, scoring goals and getting opportunities. Leicester at home, despite a potential new manager bounce, will be a great fixture for him to get involved in yet more goals for his team. So I would not be looking to sell Isak, Wood or Wissa this game week, even for those really nice João Pedro and Cunha kind of moves. We will get to those players, but let's look at some of the players we might be more willing to sell. So these players are in the monitor category. You could keep them if you wanted to. You could sell them if you wanted to. It depends how you feel, how strongly you feel about these players. I don't think they're must keeps, but I also don't think they're must sells. Welbeck, first of all, he is playing Southampton at home, which we know is a fabulous fixture. However, it does seem that Welbeck's form is starting to drift, is starting to slip just a little bit. Raul Jimenez, unlucky not to score at the weekend in game week 12, missing a huge chance, hitting the woodwork, but on another occasion he scores, and I don't think as many people will be talking about selling Raul. We have got Spurs as the next fixture, who are not only missing Van de Ven, possibly Romero, but now Vicario has been ruled out for a long time, for multiple months for Tottenham Hotspur. So they're going to be missing 3 key defensive players in their team, and therefore it could be a good opportunity for Fulham to get on the score sheet, and you will probably back Raul, who is putting up great data to start to capitalise on all of these chances he's getting. 19 shots, 2.63 XG in the past 6 game weeks, with a decent amount of assist potential there as well. I think is really nice. Ollie Watkins is a difficult one. Chelsea away is not great, but there is some decent fixtures after that. But can he justify his price tag when cheaper forwards are competing with him for those FPL points? And Kai Havertz benched in game week 12. Didn't really expect that, but against West Ham, if he comes back into the starting lineup, maybe he can do some damage despite some weaker data here. Haaland at this point just has to be a sell. The fixtures are getting worse. The data is still really good, but this form is just not there, and he's missing a lot of chances. Things are just not clicking for Man City and Haaland right now, so there's very few excuses left to keep him in the team. Now we have Liverpool away as the Game Week 13 fixture. Solanke is in here as well as a player I would be looking to sell, just not justifying that price tag compared to some of the other picks who are a little bit cheaper. I think there are some decent replacements for Solanke out there, and Jamie Vardy, a pretty easy sell as well if you do still have him in your FPL team. More attackers available for Leicester now could mean that Vardy's minutes are beginning to, what may begin to get limited a little bit, particularly over a busy fixture schedule coming up. There are going to be a few players who may see reduced minutes, and I think Vardy is one of those guys. Cole Palmer is definitely a player I would like to keep. I know he has blanked a lot recently, but he has had some tough fixtures, and even in Game Week 12, despite the blank, he had a huge opportunity to score. Madueke, unfortunately, was in the way of a huge XG chance for Palmer, which meant that he was not able to get that goal. If that goal did go in, then I think we'd be having a very different conversation. And I think we have to talk about that chance for Palmer as if it was a goal. When we're making decisions going forward, we have to assume that was a goal in a way to try and judge how good he will be going forward. And given these fixtures, Aston Villa in poor defensive form, Southampton there, Spurs there, we spoke about their defensive issues at the moment, and Brentford in 16 as well. These are really nice fixtures for Palmer, and there's no way I'd be looking to sell him. We'll even talk about buying him in a few minutes' time. Brian Mbeumo is also a player I would look to keep for this Leicester fixture, but he is on his last legs, it has to be said. Over the last few game weeks, his data has been severely down. In fact, he's only taken one shot in the last 3 game weeks, which is just not good enough. A little bit of creativity, one key pass in each of the last 3 game weeks, but I think Wissa has impacted him a lot and his ability to get FPL points for us. So it is a last chance. The fact that it is a good fixture does put Mbeumo on the menu for one more game week, but he is a keep, but I don't think he's going to be very high in the buy category, to be honest. And Bruno, I would give him one more week as well against Everton at home. Not expecting too much from him, but with a new system, it's very obvious that this Amorim system at Manchester United, it's going to take a while for the players to adapt, and I don't know if we should expect results immediately, but Bruno as a penalty taker is always going to be very, very useful to have in your team. You never know when you're going to get points that way, and he's still taking plenty of shots and creating a lot. You can see 20 shots here and 19 key passes. These are huge numbers for a midfielder in the past 6 game weeks. So probably the most controversial monitor for me is going to be Semenyo. He is suspended for Game Week 13, but he is a player I would endeavour to keep in your FPL team. He's just putting up too good of numbers here, 24 shots, creating a little bit with 8 key passes here, and the fixtures are really nice. Wolves, obviously he can't play in that game, but after that we have Spurs at home, Ipswich, and then West Ham as 3 fixtures in a row. So despite the fact he is suspended, I would just try and bench him just for Game Week 13 and hold on to a nailed cheap FPL asset, because there isn't too much better at this kind of price tag. I think after Game Week 13, Semenyo is a player who you will really want in your team as your cheap option, so I would not be looking to sell him. Try and avoid selling him where possible, although I understand that if you can't bench him, you don't have a bench option to come in and play, then that is going to make things more difficult. But I would actually prefer to maybe transfer out your, I don't know, if you have another midfielder who you are planning on benching this week instead of Semenyo, I would maybe transfer that player out and keep Semenyo instead. Rodgers, a little bit more difficult fixture against Chelsea, of course, but Brentford and Southampton after that means that Rodgers is still a decent player to have in your FPL team for that price tag. Still good value for money and a decent bench option to cover in those fixtures where there is an extreme difference between the quality of fixture for one of your main players and a bench Rodgers, but still really like him for his price tag. Smith Rowe, I know he is getting substituted early and sometimes he doesn't perform, but the next 2 fixtures I still think are pretty decent for him. So he is going to be a player who we look to sell in the near future, but the next 2 game weeks I think I would look to hold on to him. Garnacho, I've actually put a rotation badge on him. I don't think any Man United player is safe right now. as Amorim will look to make changes to try and figure out his best 11. And Everton at home, like I said with Fernandes, not expecting too much from this fixture, so I'm not totally convinced on Garnacho. I would be monitoring him right now, but he could be a sell in the near future. But the players I would be looking to sell are Brennan Johnson, obviously benched last game week, so now he is rotation risk, particularly over a busy fixture schedule. We know his finishing ability is not quite up there, although he does get plenty of chances to score, which is good. But the fixtures aren't amazing for Spurs in general. Fulham, Bournemouth and Chelsea, the next three, these are not games where you expect to get too many goals in, and with Spurs missing some defensive players, maybe that impacts the game state of a lot of these fixtures as well. Luis Diaz, rotation risk, bad fixtures, just an easy sell at that price tag. And McNeil, Everton's fixtures are really going downhill from here, so he is another player I would be looking to remove. As for those defenders, Digne, benched in game week 12. What do you expect? He is one of the biggest trolls in FPL, but I actually really rate him as a player to keep in your team. Definitely a player with some of the best attacking potential in the Premier League among defenders right now. Being on set pieces really does help that, and he's been genuinely one of Aston Villa's better players. He did get the rest after the international break, having played the full game against Italy for France, which is, again, really impressive and shows how good he has been this season. But I do think there's going to be opportunities here. You may consider benching him against Chelsea and Brentford, but honestly, I think that he is a player you can play in any game week, given the attacking potential that he does have. Aston Villa have been struggling defensively, but as they look to get more players back over the next few weeks, Onana, Kamara, Mings, these kind of guys, Concept as well, then we should hope that Aston Villa do improve defensively just a little bit. And as for these Liverpool defenders, Konate, I would probably look to keep him as well. It's not a great Man City fixture, but we saw Spurs kept a clean sheet against them last week, and City have just been very, very poor. After that, I think the fixtures aren't necessarily great every week, but Liverpool are a strong enough defense where you can get some clean sheets here. And Trent Alexander-Arnold, provided he is back and available for game week 12, he will be a keep as well if you still manage to hold on to him in game week 12. But maybe you can bench him even if he isn't available. If he isn't available, we may have to reassess. Maybe he isn't a keep after all. But right now, Trent at 6.9 million is a player I quite like the look of at presuming he is available. Constant one to monitor. I do still think he is one of the better cheap defenders to have in your team as a rotation option, provided he is available. Not really sure he's worth a transfer out, to be perfectly honest. Robinson is also in here as well as a monitor. You could consider selling him, but again, I think he is one of the better defenders to have, and Fulham, outside of that Wolves game, I think they have been a fairly strong defence in the Premier League, and we do have that creative potential from Robinson as well. These Man City defenders, however, would be looking to get rid. No Rodri and now no Kovacic means that Man City seem to be getting worse and worse defensively. In fact, looking at the past 3 game weeks, Man City are actually the weakest defence in the Premier League. And if you look over the past 6 game weeks, I believe they are kind of maybe bottom 4 or 5 for expected goals conceded. They really are terrible, and considering how much you spend on a Gavardio or a Lewis, it is just not worth having these players. Gavardio in particular is a player I would be desperate to move to an Arsenal defender, which we will be talking about in the buy category here as well. So these are players very close to being sells, and the only reason they have avoided being in the sell category is because of, well, these next 3 guys. Romero, Keane and Van de Ven. Because despite Gavardio and Lewis being pretty poor FPL picks right now, at least they're going to get some game time. Romero, on the other hand, is doubtful for this game week, and we know Spurs are just absolutely shot defensively with those players missing at the moment. So I think Romero would be a player to sell. Keane not even starting anymore now that Branthwaite is back, and Van de Ven is going to be out for a few more game weeks, so not worth holding on to him. So the Man City players get out of the sell category just by virtue of there being better defenders to sell, I suppose. But this game week in particular, I do have to wonder, is it worth making defender transfers when there are so many great attackers available for us to make transfers on right now? Is it worth spending our valuable transfers on defenders? I don't know if it is. It's certainly not worth taking -4s for defenders usually. And I think there's just so many great attackers that we need to focus our transfers on instead. So let's do that next. But before we do, if you haven't dropped a like on the video, that would be massively appreciated. It really does help out the channel, and you don't want to get a yellow or a red card for not liking the video. Of course, do subscribe if you haven't done already as well. Okay, this is the big conversation. We're looking at forwards to buy right now, and João Pedro is going to be right at the top of my list, beating Cunha. I would say that João Pedro is the priority transfer for a couple of reasons, really. The first reason is the fixtures. João Pedro plays against Southampton next at home. That is a superior fixture to Bournemouth at home, I would say. And even Fulham away right now is probably a better fixture than Everton away. After that, João Pedro and Brighton face Leicester, where Wolves face West Ham. So in each of the next 3 game weeks, João Pedro seems to have the best fixtures. So yes, you're probably going to want to buy both of these players for your FPL team. However, João Pedro is probably the one you buy first out of the 2. Also, João Pedro is cheaper. We know this, significantly cheaper, so that is going to be much easier as a move for you guys to make. His data is not showing too much right now because he's only just come back from injury, but if you've watched much of Brighton this last couple of weeks, you will definitely understand that João Pedro, he is that guy. Absolutely brilliant stuff, and a penalty taker as well. He is going to be cooking in these next game weeks. One small consideration about Pedro is that there might be a slight amount of rotation risk, but it should only be small because, like we have seen time and time again, the manager agrees João Pedro is Brighton's star player. He is their Saka, their Palmer, their Salah. He's the star of the team, and therefore he should be playing the vast majority of games for them. Plus, we know what he can do from the bench, as we saw against Man City. Let's talk about Cunha next as well. He is obviously doing absolutely amazingly, but has to be said, he is Mr. Overperformer right now. 1.5 XG in the past 6 game weeks and 5 goals scored from that. As for assists, 1.49 XA. Decent amount of creativity, but he's gained 3 assists from that, which is quite the overperformance, it has to be said. But he's taking a lot of shots. He's clearly in a great amount of confidence right now, where everything he touches seems to be turning into gold. And particularly with attackers, we do need to take form into consideration. Bournemouth at home is by no means a bad fixture, but it's just that Cunha versus Pedro, I just slightly prefer Pedro if you can only get one this game week. But they're both great options, and that's why they're both in the buy category. If you already have Pedro, time to get Cunha. If you already have Cunha, it's time to get Pedro. And Isak is going to be my 3rd buy. I think a lot of people will be put off by Isak following game week 12, but I really don't think you should be. I think this is still a great FPL pick to go for, and I would be looking to buy him potentially as well. But of course, João Pedro and Cunha are the priorities. After that, we have Nicholas Jackson. Yes, I do think that Jackson is just below the 3 above him. Still definitely a player to consider, but I don't think Aston Villa is an amazing fixture. It's an okay fixture, don't get me wrong, but I don't think it's amazing. And Jackson, his data is not quite as good as Isak, and it's not even that far. Really, the XG is better than Cunha, but the XA is not. So I think Cunha is still a better pick than Jackson as well at this moment. But Jackson is fine. He's still a very decent pick. He's very close to being a buy. It's just the fact we have so many great options right now, which drops him into the monitor category. Don't forget, one more yellow card for Jackson, and he will be suspended. And there is a little bit of rotation risk there as well. Other monitors include Evanilson, who looks okay. Watkins, we already spoke about him. Welbeck as well. Not sure I'd be looking to buy these players, but they're definitely options right now. Certainly, if you already have these players, they're fine to have, but I'm not sure if I would be buying them ahead of some of the players higher up on this list. And avoid Wood, good fixture this week, but after that, it's pretty bad. So I think he is a player that we can pretty comfortably just avoid for now. There are just other options this game week, and after that, there are loads of much better options. So good to keep, not great to buy. Delap, another player, would not be looking to buy, and Solanke, he is also going to be an avoid for us today. For midfielders, we mentioned about Man City being one of the worst defences in the Premier League at this current moment, which has come right at the greatest moment for the in-form Mo Salah, who is putting up some really nice data here. 20 shots, 10 big chances, phenomenal stuff. 4.54 XG, and a little bit of creativity there from him as well. The fixtures in general, they don't look great on paper, but we back Salah against anyone at this present moment. The form that he's in, he's going to be a captain option every week for you as well. Cole Palmer, I still think, is a buy and the second priority player to buy in the midfield areas, and Saka is going to come in third after Palmer. So if you have Salah and Palmer already, maybe Saka is the guy on the watch list, but I still think Salah and Palmer are the guys to go. Quick note on Saka, now that Ødegaard is back, Saka looks back. Seriously, he looks like not just a one return per game kind of, tick along, safe player to have in your squad, but a genuine captaincy option. He looked really involved this weekend against Forest, and the next fixture against West Ham is even better than that. So I think Saka could be back to his best and a serious FPL consideration going forward. I have to admit to you guys, after those big three expensive midfielders, there's not too much going on and there's not too many players I would be desperate to buy in the midfield category. So maybe forwards is the focus for transfers this week if you already do have Salah, Palmer and Saka. But just some maybe players to monitor right now. Mittelma could be a potential option with Southampton up next. His data is okay, it's fine. Ahmad looks like he could cook in this new Amarim system. I actually back him to play a little bit further forward in future game weeks, and he's so cheap. Maybe he's a cheap option for you guys. Another cheap option is maybe Jorginho Rutter, but I think there's a bit of rotation risk there at this moment. Maddison, a little bit of rotation risk. Fixtures aren't amazing, so I'm not 100% convinced on that one. And Bruno, if you didn't buy him last week or the week before, I would probably be less willing to buy him at that price tag at this moment. I think we need to see Manchester United click a little bit more before buying Bruno. And avoid Smith Rowe. Fixtures aren't good enough in general, and there could be a little bit of rotation risk. If you don't have him already, he's not a way I would be looking. Kulusevski looks really good, genuinely, but I think that the way he's kind of playing doesn't necessarily suit him as an FPL option. You can see his data is pretty poor here, so not really an FPL kind of guy, but playing really well outside of that. And Brian Mbeumo, with his numbers being down, yes, I would keep him for this game week, but I wouldn't buy him if you don't have him already, so he is going to go in the avoid category as well. As for defenders to buy this week, well, it's Arsenal time. It really, really is. Arsenal, I think, are going to be back defensively. Got a clean sheet in game week 12, and I think that is going to continue over the next game weeks. West Ham in here in 13. Also got Manchester United, Fulham. I think there is potential for clean sheets there from Arsenal, and Everton at home is just that plum peach beauty of a clean sheet potential for any defender, no matter who you play for. Even if you play for Brentford, you can keep a clean sheet against Everton, so it would seem. So Gabriel is going to be top of the list with his attacking threat, but Timber, another player with a decent amount of attacking threat, and we saw that a little bit with him playing at right back, linking up with Ødegaard and Saka on that right hand side. I think there's going to be some real potential for Timber to get some attacking returns. 5.5 million should be reasonably nailed at right back whilst Ben White recovers from surgery. That's going to be a couple of months at least. So Timber, very much a player on the menu if you already have Gabriel in your team. And Lewis Hall, 1 point against West Ham, but I thought he played brilliantly in that game. Actually got some attacking opportunities as well, which was nice to see. And I think he works nicely as a rotation option in these coming game weeks. You can certainly play him in 13. Game week 16 looks good for him as well at home against Leicester. So Hall is still going to be one of the top cheap defensive picks for us. There's two other defenders who I quite like in the cheap category. One of them is Ait-Nouri, who I think you could play against Bournemouth. After that, fixture's really nice for him. You're really hoping for attacking returns though, as Wolves don't seem to be improving defensively. But in the easier fixtures, such as Everton in game week 14, there's always going to be a bit of clean sheet potential, and you never know when it's going to happen for you. And Lewis Dunk, I'm going to say do not buy him yet, but wait until later in the game week, because if he is declared fit and he drops to 4.3 million, which I think there's a very good chance that Dunk does drop down to 4.3 million, that is going to be a bargain with these fixtures ahead of him. So really one to monitor, really one to watch going forward. Club captain, little bit of attacking threat as we've seen in previous seasons. I think he could be a nice cheap option for you guys. Mazraoui is one to monitor, playing in a more of a right centre-back kind of role in the first game under Amorim, but he could certainly play in the wing-back positions as well potentially. Does have a little bit of versatility, which is useful to have. I think Man United do have some decent clean sheet potential games coming up, but more of a rotation player. Not sure I prefer him to some of the players higher up on this list. Saliba is also okay, but I just prefer Gabriel and Timber for their attacking potential. And Saliba, previously, he was a bit of a bonus points monster. That's not the case anymore with the changes to the bonus point system, with him only picking up 1 bonus point throughout this entire season so far. And onto some avoids. Aina is going to be a thing of the past for us. Yes, he has a good fixture against Ipswich, but after that, Forest's fixtures are genuinely awful, and I would expect Forest to lose a lot of their clean sheets that they have been gaining so far this season. Can't see that continuing too much from game week 14 onwards. As for Young here as well, again, Everton, really poor fixtures coming up. Man United and Wolves are okay, but really after that, it takes a nosedive. And I think that's the thing with Forest and Everton, because they've played so many great fixtures already this season. Well, they haven't played any of their bad fixtures yet. So all of these bad fixtures are going to come in a row for these two players. So bad news, we know with defenders, we need to look very closely at the fixtures more so than the form necessarily. And Pedro Porro, he is the most popular defender that people are buying this game week. But honestly, guys, with no Vicario, with no Van der Ven, and possibly no Romero, and these fixtures, Fulham, Bournemouth, Chelsea, Brentford, all of these teams score goals. The clean sheets, where are they going to come from? We're going to have to rely on attacking potential. And although Pedro Porro is one of the better attacking defenders, at 5.5 million, you need more than just an occasional attacking return. We do need clean sheets as well. I can't see him getting away with a 15-pointer every week in the same way as he did against Man City. Or was it 14 points? I can't remember. But the point is, it's not going to be the same situation every week. Spurs clean sheets are going to be hard to come by. And I don't think that Pedro Porro's attacking data is good enough that we can depend solely on attacking returns either. 0.5 XG in 6 game weeks, 0.65 XA in the same 6 game weeks. This is in easier fixtures as well, so not super convinced by this one. I would say he is an avoid for me at 5.5 million. Which brings us to our goalkeepers. Keep Raya, keep Sanchez. These are two of the better goalkeepers to own right now. The only goalkeepers I would sell this week are Vicario and Ramsdale, because they're both injured for significant periods of time. That is pretty much the only time I would look to make a goalkeeper transfer. As for buys, if you do need to replace a Vicario or a Ramsdale, Raya and Verbruggen would be the two guys I'd be looking to go for. Raya with the good clean sheet potential for this Arsenal team, and Verbruggen with the great fixtures for a long time to come, and a nice cheap price of 4.5 million. So close to getting clean sheet, bonus points, and save points, of course, last game week. This guy is a cheap goalkeeper who makes saves, and that is really, really useful. You can see 27 saves made in the past 6 game weeks. As for some avoids, Pickford, poor fixtures, Flecken, poor fixtures, and, just a weak defence in general for Brentford. I would not let that clean sheet against Everton like make you think that Brentford are suddenly going to be a good defence. They actually were maybe kind of fortunate to keep a clean sheet even in that game against Everton, to be fair. So yes, these are the goalkeepers, but if there's any other players that we haven't mentioned today in any position, let me know in the comments. Just throw the name of the player in the comments section and I will rate them as a buy, a sell, a keep, or an avoid, or maybe a monitor too. Let me know in the comments if there's anyone else you want to talk about, and we'll do just that. But if you enjoyed this video, make sure you do drop a like, massively appreciated. Do subscribe if you're new around here. Check out the Stick to FPL Game Week 13 podcast episode using the link in the description, and I will see you tomorrow for yet another video. See you later, mates. Bye-bye.